the fact that his father had finally acknowledged him. Motivated, he linked up with Hyun-sung that night to thank him for helping him get that rare compliment. However, Hyun-sung reminded him not to get too excited like a fat kid when seeing a Snicker bar, as there were still 2 more stages of the succession plan to complete. Reluctantly, Go Changbyum agreed to Hyun-sung's next suggestion, to join his father's company as a minor employee to build credibility. Although he hesitated at first, he couldn't ignore how much progress he had already made with Hyun-sung's guidance, so he accepted. Hyun-sung then reminded Go Changbyum that their relationship was mutually beneficial, and it was now time for Go Changbyum to fulfill this end of the bargain. Riding high on his father's approval, Go Changbyum agreed to give Hyun-sung whatever he asked for. Weeks later at school, Kim Young-chol received a slap from Kim Sunja, Jung Minho's mother, for failing to expel Hyun-sung after the bullying incident. After she left, Kim Young-chol approached Hyun-sung, begging Hyun-sung to confess to assaulting Jung Minho and his friends, promising he would help minimize the punishment. However, Hyun-sung, aware of the pressure Kim Young-chol was under, calmly warned him to use his 2 brain cells in his fat head and realize the damage it would cause if his own bribery and infidelity were exposed. The day of the review meeting finally arrived, and everyone was shocked when Go Changbyum, heir to the Myeongjin construction empire, appeared as Hyun-sung's guardian. Jung Minho was also present, accompanied by his mother, Kim Sunja. As the meeting began, Kim Young-chol, who was supposed to advise on Hyun-sung's punishment, shocked everyone by defending him instead. He revealed how Jung Minho and his gang had been bullying other students, framing Hyun-sung as the aggressor. A few minutes before Kim Young-chol defended Hyun-sung, he spotted Go Changbyum with Hyu-sung, which stunned him that Hyu-sung had such a powerful guardian, more powerful than Jung Minho's parents. Realizing he would stand to gain more from supporting Hyu-sung, the greedy, ugly ass decided to switch lanes. Back in the present, Davwon, who had been bribed heavily by Kim Sunja, was baffled by Kim Young-chol's sudden defense of Hyun-sung. He wondered if the man was high on LSD. In disbelief, Davwon demanded Kim Young-chol address the matter of the assault on the boys, but Kim Young-chol instead continued to emphasize how Jung Minho and his gang had been terrorizing the entire school. With unwavering conviction, Kim Young-chol insisted that all students involved in the incident, not just Hyun-sung, should be held accountable. Hearing this fierce defense irritated the corrupt old cracky principal, who quickly silenced Kim Young-chol to prevent him from revealing too much. Davwon then turned to Jung Minho, asking him to explain what had happened that day. The liar capped all the way, claiming he had only been passing by when he saw Hyun-sung beating up his friend, Park Min-chol. He added that when he tried to intervene, Hyun-sung suddenly attacked him as well, leaving him beaten to a pulp. To sell his lies, Jung Minho even shed fake tears, appealing to the emotions of the judges and parents. He further claimed he had been assaulted not once but twice. At that moment, his deadbeat ugly mother, Kim Sunja, interrupted, trying to manipulate the parents present by warning them that if they allowed Hyun-sung's behavior to go unpunished, their own children could be next. Her twisted words successfully riled up the parents, who began to demand that Hyun-sung face severe punishment. Meanwhile, Park Min-chol and his gang were still laughing and playing mobile games in the hospital. They were confident that the school's judgment would favor them, especially with Kim Sunja, who was determined not to let her son's attacker escape unscathed on their side. Park Min-chol even assured his gang that, regardless of what happened to Hyun-sung, he would continue to bully the dude even to the afterlife. Back at the meeting, after hearing enough, Go Changbyum slammed his fist on the table, demanding everyone's attention. He then pointed at Jung Minho and called him an ugly demon, urging the parents not to believe a word that came out of his disgusting liar mouth. Davwon, taken aback, warned Go Changbyum not to insult a student in such a way, prompting Go Changbyum to correct himself by calling Jung Minho a skinny under demon with the face of a lizard. Go Changbyum continued by revealing that he had looked into Park Min-chol and his group, discovering they had a notorious reputation for harassing and robbing other students. Go Changbyum then turned to Davwon, accusing him of covering up for these boys and asking whether he had been bribed. He then stated that Hyun-sung had only acted in self-defense, a claim confirmed by his advisor, hinting at Kim Young-chol. Go Changbyum's defense of Hyun-sung infuriated Kim Sunja. She stood up and shouted at him for labeling her son a thug, demanding to know how he was related to Hyun-sung, as everyone knew Hyun-sung was an orphan abandoned by his useless father who never returned after going out to get milk. At that moment, Go Changbyum smirked, flashing back to a conversation he had with Hyun some days earlier. While in the car, Hyun Sung had expressed his desire for Go Changbyum to become his legal guardian. He explained that while money was important, he needed power to carry out his revenge plan. Hyun Sung revealed that he was planning to stir up trouble at school, which would inevitably lead to legal issues, and he needed Go Changbyum's backing. With Go Changbyum's protection, no one in the city would dare to touch him. In return, Hyun Sung promised to do everything in his power to ensure that Go Changbyum would become the chairman of his father's company. So Go Changbyum agreed to help. Back in the present, Kim Sunja demanded to know once again who Go Changbyum was. Calmly, Go Changbyum revealed that he was Hyun Sung's guardian and the eldest son of Myeongjin Construction Company. After this, Go Changbyum addressed the audience, stating that Hyun Sung was his brother and was not someone who would cause trouble without reason. He went on to reveal that he had intended to be one of the school's sponsors under the Myeongjin Construction Company, but after seeing how corrupt the school had become, he was reconsidering. Go Changbyum then threatened to turn the entire school upside down and ensure that none of the management staff or teachers who ignored Hyun Sung's years of being bullied and who supported the bullies for personal gain would remain unscathed. Hearing this threat, the school's management and teachers began to sweat like they were running under the scorching sun in the Sahara Desert. The old rotten principal, still reeling from shock, couldn't comprehend how Hyun Sung, who was supposed to be an orphan, with only a loser of a brother and a frail grandmother who should have died last week, could be connected to Go Changbyum, the heir to the prestigious Myeongjin Construction Company. Realizing the opportunity, Dav-won decided to switch sides also, his lifelong ambition being to establish a connection with Myeongjin Construction. Dav-won, likewise, made a quick decision to cut ties with Jung Min-ho's family and align with Go Changbyum, hoping to secure the school's sponsorship. With his mind made up, Dav-won addressed the room, declaring that Jung Min-ho was, in fact, the ringleader of the group terrorizing and bullying the entire student body. Upon hearing the shocking words that came out of the old fool's mouth, Kim Sunja was stunned by the sudden betrayals, so she yelled at the old idiot to shut up already before it was too late. But her words did nothing to deter him. Dav-won continued, revealing the truth, that Hyun Sung was one of the top-performing students and must have had a valid reason for his actions. Dav-won then suggested the committee give Hyun Sung a chance to share his side of the story. At that moment, Hyun Sung reflected on how quickly the tables had turned, all thanks to his newfound backing from the powerful Myeongjin family. He then calmly explained how Park Min-chol's group had been bullying students while the teachers turned a blind eye and defended the delinquents. He then admitted to hitting Jung Min-ho and being responsible for sending Park Min-chol and his gang to the hospital. However, he pointed out that he was only being targeted because he didn't come from a wealthy family, whereas Park Min-chol's group had been tormenting students for years without consequence. Hyun Sung then issued a warning. If justice wasn't served, he would expose the corruption at the school, dragging its prestigious name through the mud. The only way to avoid this was to punish Jung Min-ho and his gang for their evil actions. Upon hearing this, Kim Sunja became furious. She loudly proclaimed that her son would never be held accountable for such crimes. She immediately called her husband, informing him of the betrayal by Dav-won and Kim Young-chol, who were now framing Jung Min-ho for the violence. She also revealed that everyone had turned on them because they discovered Hyun Sung's sponsor was none other than Go Changbyum, the eldest son of Myeongjin Construction. After she let out those words, her cowardly husband ordered Kim Sunja to leave Jung Min-ho to face the consequences on his own and to return home at once, fearing that staying involved would destroy their family's reputation. His words left Kim Sunja utterly stunned. Later that night, as Hyun Sung lay on the floor unwinding from the stress of the day, he thought about how the school management had finally handed down its judgment. Jung Min-ho and his gang were expelled, while Hyun Sung was sentenced to 100 hours of volunteer work for fighting on school grounds. After the ruling, Hyun Sung encountered Jung Min-ho in the school hallway. Upon seeing him, Jung Min-ho rushed forward, ready to retaliate, but his punch was stopped by his mother, who ordered him to kneel and beg for forgiveness. Stunned by her demand, Jung Min-ho hesitated. His mother had never asked him to do something so humiliating. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he reluctantly knelt down and begged Hyun Sung. After this humiliation, Hyun Sung leaned close and whispered in Jung Min-ho's ear, telling him that his apology was total horseshit to him. Hyun Sung then promised to make Jung Min-ho's future a living nightmare from that day forward. Back in the present, Hyun-sung's phone buzzed with a message from Park Min-chol begging for a meeting. A few minutes later that same night, Hyun-sung went out to meet Park Min-chol. Upon arriving, Park Min-chol immediately bowed his head and began to apologize profusely for the years of bullying, pleading for Hyun-sung to let it go. He revealed that a teacher had told him that if he could get Hyun-sung's forgiveness, he might avoid expulsion. Desperate, Park Min-chol promised to do anything for Hyun-sung in the future, from running errands to becoming his personal slave, as long as he was forgiven and allowed to stay in school. As Hyun-sung listened, he thought about how Park Min-chol and his gang were Yunjins and how expulsion could ruin their lives forever. Sensing that Hyun-sung remained silent, Park Min-chol became even more desperate and revealed that he and his friends had followed orders to bully students. Just as he was about to expose the identity of the person who gave the orders, Hyun-sung cut him off, telling him he already knew. This revelation shocked Park Min-chol. Years earlier, after Hyun-sung had fallen into a coma, a bullied student had jumped from the rooftop of the school, leaving behind a note exposing the secret organization known as the Golden Circle. This group recruited students from wealthy, powerful families in prestigious schools and turned them into bullies in exchange for ensuring their academic success. Although the identities of the core members remained a mystery, Hyun-sung realized that to exact his revenge on those who had pushed him to his death, he would need to expose and dismantle the Golden Circle. Back to the present, Hyun-sung then asked Park Min-chol how he had been recruited by the Golden Circle. Park Min-chol admitted that he had been brought in by Shin Yangmin, a notorious third-year student infamous for bullying the entire school. Hearing this, Hyun-sung considered using Shin Yangmin to draw out the Golden Circle, but he knew that Shin Yangmin was a badass Sigma, strong and ruthless, with the physique of an MMA fighter. Attacking him head-on would be a challenge. For the moment, Hyun-sung set aside thoughts of Shin Yangmin and focused on dealing with Park Min-chol. Grabbing him by the collar, Hyun-sung coldly informed him that the word forgiveness no longer existed in his vocabulary. From now on, anytime they crossed paths, Park Min-chol would face a beating. With that, Hyun-sung repeatedly smacked Park Min-chol's head, leaving him in a state of fear and shock. The next day, rumors spread throughout the school about how Hyun-sung had brutalized Park Min-chol and his gang. As Hyun-sung walked into class, students stared at him in awe and fear. Just then, Lee Jung-min, the ugly fatso, approached him, thanking him for getting rid of the bullies and acting like a hero. But his words irritated Hyun-sung, because throughout the entire investigation and meeting, the useless waste of space had never once stood up to testify against the bullies or support Hyun-sung. Now, he suddenly wanted to talk because the bullies were gone. Hyun-sung harshly told him to keep the same energy, and that he didn't care about him or his donut-shaped head. He could die for all he cared. Then, he told Lee Jung-min to get lost, never wanting to see his fat, Shrek face again. Meanwhile, in another scene, Shin Yangmin reported to a mysterious dude that Park Min-chol and his gang had been expelled, and their plans had been ruined. He also mentioned that before their expulsion, they were beaten like thieves by Hyun-sung, who had now become untouchable thanks to the backing of the powerful Nunjin construction. Despite the current state of the school, with the administration closely monitoring cases of bullying, Shin Yangmin refused to give up. He saw this as an opportunity to make even more money through intimidation and bullying, capitalizing on the chaos. Back in class, Hyun-sung pondered on how to get the attention of the Golden Circle. He realized that to do so, he would need to perform excellently academically and raise his grades. Later that day, Hyun-sung headed to a rundown gym, where he sought out Jung Do-cheol, the city's first MMA fighter to become a world champion, now a washed-up, forgotten loser. Determined to learn how to fight, Hyun-sung entered the gym with a clear goal: to gain the strength and skills needed to take on the Golden Circle. At the same time, on the school rooftop, Park Jin-woo, a first-year student with the face of a traumatized gorilla, had been summoned by Shin Yangmin. Once there, Shin Yangmin instructed him to make life unbearable for Hyun-sung to the point where he would break down mentally. Meanwhile, at the scrappy gym, Hyun-sung finally met the washed-up former champion, Jung Do-cheol. He wasted no time and told him that he needed to learn how to fight. Intrigued but cautious, Jung Do-cheol asked why Hyun-sung wanted to learn, and Hyun-sung revealed that his goal was to crush all the bullies who had tormented him in school. Jung Do-cheol, unimpressed by his reason for learning how to fight, immediately refused. He made it clear that his gym wasn't a place where people learned to fight just to beat others up. Seeing how reluctant Jung Do-cheol was, Hyun-sung quickly pondered how to win him over. He remembered that Jung Doo-cheol's career had been ruined because he was caught using illegal substances. Though even now, as a washed-up coach running a crummy gym, he still managed to train a top fighter, Kim Hwa-yeol. Using this information, Hyun-sung told Jung Doo-cheol that he was willing to go to any lengths to get his help, just like Doo-cheol had done in the past, even venturing into using illegal substances to achieve what he wanted. Even after that bold statement, Jung Doo-cheol started to walk away, still refusing to train him. In a last-ditch effort, Hyun-sung offered him $100 million to become his coach. The temptation of that much money proved too much for the broke-ass coach. He then reluctantly agreed to train Hyun-sung, but laid down two conditions. First, Hyun-sung could never, under any circumstances, resort to using drugs like he did. Desperate for his help, Hyun-sung agreed. The second condition was that Hyun-sung had to last 3 minutes with him in the ring, a test to prove his hunger and determination. Hyun-sung accepted, knowing it was the only way to get his needed help. Later that day, Hyun-sung returned home to his elderly grandmother, who was immediately alarmed by his bruised and battered appearance. She demanded to know why he looked like he had been hit by a helicopter. A few hours ago, Hyun-sung had entered the octagon with Jung Doo-cheol, where the real test began. Doo-cheol had challenged him to survive 3 minutes inside the octagon, promising that if he could endure it, he would take Hyun-sung on as a student and train him to be the best. As the fight commenced, Hyun-sung adopted a basic fighting stance, holding his hands above his chin. Jung Doo-cheol, seeing how awkward and amateurish Hyun-sung's stance was like that of an 80-year-old grandmother. Still, he noticed something important. Hyun-sung showed no fear. Without warning, Jung Doo-cheol launched a powerful punch directly at Hyun-sung's face. Although Hyun-sung managed to block it by guarding, the force of the impact sent him crashing to the ground, blood pouring from his nose. He lay there, stunned from the blow, while the world around him spun. Standing over him, Jung Doo-cheol told him to get up, reminding him that only 10 seconds had passed. The agreement was to survive 3 full minutes. With unyielding determination and a bleeding nose, Hyun-sung prepared himself for another blow. Despite his chin guarding his face, Jung Doo-cheol delivered a punch without hesitation. However, the assault abruptly stopped, causing Hyun-sung to wonder if the relentless trainer had grown tired. However, before he could react, a brutal low kick to his ribs sent him crashing to the ground. As Hyun-sung lay on the floor, Jung Doo-cheol urged him to surrender. But Hyun-sung, never one to give up, struggled to his feet. The barrage of punches resumed, landing heavily as he tried to shield his face with his hands. He attempted to strike back, but Jung Doo-cheol easily deflected the punch and capitalized on the opening with a devastating uppercut that knocked Hyun-sung out. Seeing Hyun-sung sprawled out, Jung Doo-cheol assumed the fight was over and began to leave. To his surprise, he heard a voice behind him. Hyun-sung, battered but defiant, declaring that the fight would continue. Jung Doo-cheol, taken aback, warned him that the time for child's play was over and that he would no longer go easy on him. Jung Doo-cheol then swung a punch, which Hyun-sung managed to block. However, expecting another low kick, Hyun-sung braced himself. Instead, he received a vicious low jab to his liver, an excruciating pain unlike anything he had felt before. He crashed to the ground once more. Seeing the weakling sprawled on the floor, Jung Doo-cheol urged him to give up and go home. Struggling with his inner demons and driven by a fierce desire for revenge, Hyun-sung fought through the pain. Memories of his time in a coma flashed through his mind, fueling his determination. With sheer willpower, he slowly rose to his feet and assumed his fighting stance, surprising Jung Doo-cheol, who knew that even seasoned fighters would struggle to withstand such a liver shot. Undeterred, Jung Doo-cheol charged at Hyun-sung, delivering a punishing blow that pulverized his nose. Yet the Giga Chad remained standing like a man possessed, his resilience almost supernatural. Jung Doo-cheol continued his assault with a low jab to Hyun-sung's solar plexus, followed by a punch to his face. Just then, the timer signaled the end of the 3-minute round. Jung Doo-cheol, exhausted and impressed by Hyun-sung's tenacity, walked out of the ring, instructing him to get medical attention and to transfer the $100 million training fee to his account. In the present, Hyun-sung lied to his grandmother, telling her he was involved in a school fight. A few minutes later, Hyun-sung urged his grandmother to enroll in the apartment subscription program offered by Myeongjin Construction. Although his grandmother was concerned about the financial implications, Hyun-sung reassured her, explaining that he had spoken with Go Changbyum, who assured him her name would be on the list. Hyun-sung saw this as a way to repay his grandmother for all she had done for him. The next day at school, Shin Yangmin praised Park Jinwoo for supposedly beating Hyun-sung. Hearing this, Park Jinwoo was taken aback, as he was not responsible for Hyun-sung's injuries. Confused but seizing the opportunity, Park Jinwoo played along, taking credit for Hyun-sung's disfigured face. Park Jinwoo, after meeting Shin Yangmin on the rooftop on his way to the class, paused and wondered who must have been responsible for the total makeover on Hyun-sung's face. The moron then concluded that if Hyun-sung could be beaten so badly, he might not be as formidable as previously thought. Determined to confront Hyun-sung if their paths crossed, Park Jinwoo then sent a freshman minion to warn all other freshmen not to associate with Hyun-sung if they wanted to avoid trouble. Over the following weeks, Chung Doo-cheol trained Hyun-sung like Creed. Despite the grueling physical demands, Hyun-sung pressed on, driven by his goal.